My name is Joesph Ravens and I'm director of Defibrillator Gallery. I'm also a performance artist and I make my own work. I was introduced to performance art in the late 1980s. I was in my undergraduate program for theater. I was training at the time specifically in periods and styles, so I was learning a lot of Shakespeare, Greek theater, Commedia dell'arte, things like this. And I enjoyed it, but it never really satisfied me, and I took a course, a workshop or class on performance art. It was my senior year in undergrad, a small university in Wisconsin. And for the first time, I realized what it was like to be a creative artist versus an interpretive artist. Now, Chicago has sort of a special place for me because when I was in high school, I took a summer seminar, and I remember the instructor talking about the Art Institute as the pinnacle, the best school that you could go to in the art world, and so I always thought, oh, I'd love to go there one day. And then in the 80s, when I was learning about performance art, Chicago had Randolph Street Gallery, also Name Gallery, but Randolph put out a publication, and before the internet, of course, we were relying on magazines and things like that to get our information. So I also thought one day I want to move to Chicago and perform at Randolph Street Gallery. But most importantly, in my third year of grad school, I studied abroad. So it was the first time that I left the country, and I was working in Amsterdam. And both there and my next residency was in Berlin soon after I graduated. I realized that I was relying too heavily on text in my work and character, and I was seeing the work that was coming out of Europe and other places, and it was more strongly rooted in image, in imagery and conceptual ideas. And so I made a large transition at that point. It wasn't until I started working internationally where I sort of abandoned any traces of theatricality that were left in my work and started doing more action-based or task-based or, you know, perhaps visually luscious performance. What I noticed most, not necessarily based in an object, in the last few years I realized that throughout my work I'm constantly sort of expelling something from my body. Like either something comes out my mouth or my belly or a giant mouth on that side of my body or even my ass. Like I just noticed that in my performances I'm often sort of spewing something forth. So I think that's really interesting. A lot of it is just about, when I do reuse materials, it's a lot about that they were sort of brought in just spontaneously or through inspiration, and then I related to them. So the head was made for a specific performance, Katty Wampus, and I had it commissioned, or I had it made by a mascot company, so I sent them images and I said that I wanted a mascot of myself. And when I got it and started working with it, I started becoming more interested in it. Like, I knew I was making a replica of myself, and I knew I was utilizing a sort of capitalist or advertising, you know, the idea of mascot is really interesting to me. So sort of a reoccurring object in my work, dealing a lot with ravens, and recently I worked with Ravens again, but when I first moved to SAIC, I started using the name Joesph Ravens full-time. So it's a stage name. My real name is Ravensdorf, a German name that means village of ravens or a town of ravens or what have you. And I shortened it just basically for ease and memorability. Joesph Ravens. It was clear, it was easy to remember. And then after I did this, I decided to research the raven, the bird, and found a close connection with this bird, primarily through North American folklore, indigenous folklore about the raven trickster. But what I related to most is the idea of insatiability, of never being satisfied, and it points a lot to my endless hunger and my sort of almost fear of becoming satisfied. One of my mottos is complacency is the enemy. The idea of complacency in terms of becoming satisfied or what have you with your situation. And I think that what drives me forward is a dissatisfaction, or not dissatisfaction, that's something else, more a desire to just want to have more, to do better, to do well, to excel.